in this talk, I'm basically going to start with discussing how I how I work with like building custom JSL elements. So it's more of a it may not be useful to many people, but it's just how you can derive new UI elements from the built-in JSL units. And it's just I find it a little cool that we can do that. So I will share that. And the last part of the presentation would be about how I have started using AI, specifically Copilot, to do some of the development. I'm still adapting to it, but I just wanted to share with you guys how I'm going about it. So let's start. So just to start with, my name is Farhan Mansoor. I'm a software engineer at Predictum, and I specialize in technological applications development, stuff like that. And currently I'm working mostly on the jump front end of the Cobase KRM app that we have. If you guys don't know about it, you can look it up. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. Okay, so building custom UI elements. So what I mean by that is, first of all, why should we do it? So what's I'm going to demo today is how I combine basic JSL UI elements to build like derivative or higher level UI components through either namespace or classes. You can implement it in many ways, but the concept is kind of similar. So the idea is to build like higher level UI elements, for example, more advanced button boxes or advanced table boxes that lets you control more regarding the visual and behavior wise. Right? So standard UI elements in JSL are not very flexible. So yeah, so we want to control more. So that's kind of the premise. So it's not useful all the time, right? Sometimes we don't need that much control, and a jump is not built for that much UI flexibility anyway. So, but sometimes you need the control, and this is one way to get to controlling those. It will be less jump-like. You will see in a second, which may not be the goal. So examples would be like custom button box, toggle switches, nav bars, table box, and things like that. Like alternative to tab box, you have nav bar. So things like that. So let's go to the script. It's easier to kind of demo things, I guess. And stop me if anybody has any question at any time. So we start with the buttons demo first. Okay, so let me run this code. First, I'm just going to show you what I mean by custom stuff. Then we will get into the implementation, I guess. Okay, so if you guys are looking at my screen, so I have two button boxes, right? So on the left side, we have this button box. If I click, it should say you click the built-in button box. And then you have this custom button box. They look exactly the same. The left one is made with Jump's built-in button box. The right one is not. So the right one is made up of a combination of panel box, mouse box, text box. It just uses a bunch of elements there and combines them in a way that gives you control over a lot of things. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to try to interact with this second button. And some of these things you already can do with the built-in, right? So for example, you can do the basic stuff, right? You can change the name of the button. You can set a function to it, right? Those are the basic stuff. You can hide. Right? Hold on. Okay, so let's make it more visible again. I want to see it. Okay. So those are the same things that we can do with a regular button box, like set tip, get tooltip, But remember, this is not a button box. I'll show you what it's made of, but it's not really a button box. So, but it has the same messaging structure, right? So we're sending the similar structure to it and doing the same thing that a basic button box does. But since it's custom, you can add your own stuff, right? So I could do this. Some of them you can do it in another way. You can also do a markup with HTML if you want. You can do hover effect. You can do hover functions. Now you may not need all these capabilities, but this is one way to get them. Right? So here I kind of transform the same button to like a different thing. Any questions so far? What's happening?
I don't see anything on the chat now.
Okay. So a few more examples. You can do whatever you want with this button. You can also make it into a toggle button, right? So so this is like a toggle button, which is kind of an alternative to, I guess we would be using the radio box if I'm using the jumps built-in. You can also, so here, so how am I doing this? I mean, there are a few ways we can do it. So here, my implementation is using namespace. You can also do it using class. So let me get to the implementation. Before I do that, the way I'm making these are, the way I'm constructing them before I get to the exact implementation is basically I have this function, right, that generates a namespace in the background. And the regular button box of jump, we just call this, right, button box, and then you give it a name, and then you control it. Here is similar, right? So what I have is, since it's custom, I have it under UI.buttonbox, and it does the same thing, and I'm setting a function. You can do everything else. But in the background, it's a namespace. In this case, you can also implement it a class, an object. Here it's a namespace, and once it's generated, you can display it using. Let me go to the new window. You can display it using this type of call, right? And since its namespace, you can send it messages similar to the way you do it with a button box. So here, for example, I generated this custom button structure, and by getting the box, which I'll show in a second what it is, I am displaying it under the custom button box. And from that point on, I can control a lot of the things I want to control that, and then I can add to it. The implementation, let me open that one up. Stop me at any time. I'm going too fast. That may not be. Okay, so this is how I'm building it. It's not that, may not be that useful, but okay, so we have this function, right? That basically what it does is creates a namespace for this button, and I am basically using a text box inside a panel box. And another way we can do it is use a border box. That also works, but this particular way, what I have is I have various state variables that control the state of the structure, and I have custom functions or methods, right, that controls this display box. Okay, you can make it as complicated as you want or as simple as you want. The goal is it's totally up to you, whatever you want to do with it. But the way I did it is I just kept it same. By same I mean similar in terms of syntax as a regular button box. So I have a function called set button name, get button name, that does the same thing as a regular button box, but it's basically dealing with a combination of panel box and text box, which gives me control over all the text box properties, even though it's kind of acting as a button box, and so on. And you can see I can add custom properties to it. Basically, any sort of interaction you want, you add to it. And the idea would be to make it into a reproducible structure, right? So you can reuse this in your application if you need it. You can add an icon too. That's fine. That's like anything that goes with text box and button box applies to this, plus a little bit more. And at the end, it basically returns the namespace. So the problem with this is you have to collect your own garbage, right? So it creates a memory structure. So once it gets deleted, it's still going to be in your memory. So you have to be aware of that and then clean up. The only time I use it when I absolutely need full control over how it looks or how it behaves. So one of the purpose, well, like the reason I initially did this is to build a nav bar for our Cobase KRM application. So I will show that in a second, and then I will show you how I use this to build a nav bar. So I'm going to log into this app. I'll show you what I mean in terms of use case. Okay, so this is a Jump app, right? So this is a Jump app. Everything is done in Jump. So the idea was to create this nav bar at the top, which is kind of same in terms of look as our web app, right? So we wanted to make it consistent looking. So when people are using the web front end versus the Jump front end, they feel it's the same app. So the goal was to create something like this. And underneath this, right? So this is kind of same function as tab box that Jump has already built in. But instead of using tab box, it's basically using those custom buttons that I just showed, which are made up of mouse box, text box and things like that. And it put together in a way that just works, right? So it feels like it's a web navigation bar. And you basically control over everything, right? So now how do I use those button boxes to make something like this? So that would be kind of the next step. So let me bring that one up. Okay. So here I have another structure that builds an app box given a list of menu items, right? So if you have like 4 tabs, so here I'm just giving it 4 tab names. And the idea is for each one, it will create one of those custom buttons, right? And you can attach function to it so that when you click on it, something happens, right? So that's the idea. But by making them built on these custom buttons, you now have control over things like hover effect, borders. You can create animations and things like that. Okay, let's display this first. Okay, so idea would be, this is a simple version of the one that I showed you in that app, but the idea would be to, do something like this. Right? So you can have control over what happens to the hovering effect, and when you click on it, something happens. Let me see, what was the issue here? So I'm just trying to bind functions to these buttons, and okay. So it just gives you a simple. So there also has an active state. So you can do things like that. So you can have an active state. So the active state of this is right now just this particular background. But you can do things like you can change icons. You can do you can pretty much do animations too if you want. And you can control what gets displayed out afterwards, right? So that's kind of the end goal, right? So you can make it as complicated as you want if you need it, or not, right? You may not need it at all. So the way I'm building it behind the scene is, again, the same. That's for the toggle box, and that's for the nav box. Second, it does the same thing. What it does, it's once you pass a set of tab names, right? It would basically create those custom buttons. So it's a namespace of namespace, right? So it will make those custom button boxes for each of them, right? Which is with its own property, and you control those abstract structures with its own properties, and then you basically can do whatever you want, right? You can have your own custom functions, custom effects. So for example, here I have a reset method that I can make up to clear the states and things like that, and I can also, but at the end of the day, it's basically a bunch of mouse box with inside it's either border box or table box, or sorry, text box to control everything. Okay. Any question? Right. Gonna move to the next stuff. So it may not be useful to most people, but I found a use case, so I decided to kind of tweak or have fun with it. And you can extend it. You can also implement the whole thing using class. The only reason I didn't use class is I was building this in Jump 17, and I think we were having some class issues. I don't know if those are still there, but you can implement the whole thing in class and objects, and that's fine too. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, we talked about these, is kind of how I am trying to use AI to kind of do some of the coding stuff. Okay, so let's go there. So right now I'm just trying to use GitHub Copilot. So this might be a little bit more useful than the first part of the presentation. So this is one of our repo, right? So and I'm probably gonna demonstrate some of this. So the idea is you use the Copilot, right, to do tasks like, generate code or refactor, fix bugs, creating test code, right? So, but it's not as good with JSL as it is with other languages, like more popular ones, right? The Python, JavaScript. So it does a better job with those languages. But there are like few ways you can like tweak it. So I'll probably gonna go to one of them here. So the one thing you can do is I don't know if everybody knows about this or not, but you can add this instructions file, right? So this is preview this. Did I just forget how to preview? It is in Markdown, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to preview it in a way that I can set. Anyways, point is, before you prompt Copilot, right, you want to give a set of instructions for general instructions, right, so that it does a better job with GSL. Now, the more refined this instruction is, the better it gets. And you could have separate instructions for each repo, or you can have general instructions. So the idea is you add examples. You can also add stuff or snippets from the scripting index, and you can, if you have custom instructions, for example, if I have a certain contracts for tests, I'll get to that in a second. You can describe all those here, and it picks up those before it answers any questions or it does anything. So this is one way to tweak it so that it does a better job with code generation and refactoring tasks. So here, for example, is in this instruction, it's explaining some of the modules in this repository, some of the utilities libraries that's using, any sort of construction examples. I don't have too much yet. I'm still working on this, so I'm probably going to add much more so that it's more refined. You can also add direct examples. So if there's an example, a set of code pattern, right? You can put patterns there. They will follow your patterns, any sort of references. But before I get to that, I forgot to mention, right? So you have to get the extension, right? The JSL jump extension that are available. If someone doesn't know about it, it's basically you can get it from the marketplace. And you need this because this helps with the code generation. Okay, so that's first thing, right? So we need to see the more refined your instructions are, the better it gets. And the next thing I want to talk about is actual using it, right? So one way I can use it is I could generate test code, right? So let's do that first before I can actually show the code generation stuff. If I try to, so I'm not sure, I don't know if you know about the Hamcrest stuff, right? So we use JSL Hamcrest framework that Jump built to do our unit testing, automated testing. And some of those testing are, I can show you a sample code, for example. This is one of our modules, and this is like one of the test cases. So we're testing for certain conditions and stuff like that using the Hamcrest framework. So these are some of the things that GitHub Copilot can do better, relatively. It's still not that good yet than other stuff. So for example, if I do this, let me go and actually generate something. Where is my util? So I'm going to just pick on a function, random, easy one that I can do right now. That's not it, okay. Yeah, I can do this one. So this one, compute leverage design distance between two string. So let's say I want to create a test case for this. So what I can do is I can add, I can select it. As soon as you select it, it adds it to the context. As you can see top on the bottom right corner, it adds that particular section of the code, right, as a context. You can add more context. For example, if I wanted to say follow the pattern of existing test code, right, I could add a context and I can choose a file. I can choose a particular file, and then I can choose the entire folder of CI, right, and it will use that as a context to see all the test code before it, does your job. Now you can either put it in the ask mode or agent mode. When you put it in the ask mode, it will just answer your question or generate the code here. When you do it in agent mode, it will make the files do the code and create new files. It will be more hands-on, basically, right? So let's do an agent mode, and let's say generate Hamcrest tests for the selected function. You can also do it this inline, but I prefer to do it here. Generate for the selected function using existing test framework in CI test folder. Add the test code in a separate file just to show it works. Okay, so let's try that, and hopefully I did not run out of my free credits. What it's doing is it's created that file automatically, and it's trying to generate the code. And that is the, okay, so it did it pretty, not too bad. So we'll try to run it to see if it works. So it did something here. I already had existing code, so I'll delete those. So I already had this because I did it before. So I already had this code generated, so it just appended to it, which is, I think, it's okay. So this looks not good, right? So it's not using the, so it's not, so if you are familiar with the framework, right, you'll see it's not the right syntax. So sometimes it just takes a couple shots to do it till it gets better. The syntax is wrong. And you look into CI test, utilities test.jsl as an example. That's why that instruction file is important. So if the instruction file had those examples, it would do a much better job in one shot. So the idea is to kind of set your instructions up so that you do less work going forward, right? That should work. Well, let's see. Maybe it's not going to work because I'm presenting. Usually works and generates the code 90% of the way, and then you may have to make minor tweaks. Yeah, so it's much better. So it's using the UD assert that, and that looks like something I can start with, right? I don't know if anybody has any questions. Now it's making up the test cases. I did not really tell it to make test cases, but there are ways you can give it more context, which is something I think called contracts. So what we can do is there are contracts you can write for different, like if there's the complicated functions and then you want to be absolutely sure you test like a lot of edge cases and everything, you can create these contracts, right? So where you create input and output, and you tell Copilot like this is what are the things I want to test, and then you can give this file as a context to the prompt. So here I didn't need to, but if you do it, sometimes it does a better job at doing this. Any questions so far? So since the testing is repetitive, sometimes it's useful. Copilot helps save some time, but if it doesn't work, then it might waste more time. So you have to be careful with your setup. Some code generation tasks. Let's try that. Could regenerate this, I think. So if you have the extension installed, right, the GSL jump extension installed from the VS Code marketplace, it will follow the syntax and the snippets when it generates code. So for example, if I just do this, silly function, generate a function that calculates median distance. You can do inline too. So I usually just do it on the chat, but you can also ask these questions inline, and they will just add the code. The function that was include distance. Make sure to check for correct inputs or validate input. and then you'll follow your coding pattern, right? So whatever pattern you're using, see it's putting this in pattern. It has some documentation on top. It has the code. It also is using the libraries correctly. So we wrap the calls with PSF run. It's doing that automatically because it's taking the code base as a context. Now, if you have different pattern, it will follow. You should follow your code base context. Now, obviously, I have to check if it's doing the right thing or not. But and then from this point, you can maybe tweak it further. Usually, it does good job with smaller functions. If you are trying to build a large functions, it doesn't do that good of a job with JSL yet, or at least I couldn't get it to do that yet. But yeah, so once you do that, you can go on and write test code for this. And any question so far before I? Well,
There's quite a lot of discussions, but I don't see any specific question.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I'm not following any. I'm not following the chat, so if something I need to let me know. Okay, so what else I in mind? Now, one thing I wanted to show, I can't show it today. Maybe another time. Is you can also, if you maintain GitHub or GitLab repository, right? You can also automate code pushing, right? You can automatically push codes, generate codes based on issues, and you can automatically go through the cycle of reviewing and everything. You can assign another person to review. So you can do all those things, but the main pain point is the accuracy with JSL, and the only way to get around it is to have very well put together instructions. So that's what I would basically focus on next for a while to see if I could make it more useful. So right now it's more like still a little gimmicky for me. I'm not there yet, but it has potential. And I also thought I'm using GPT because I don't think I have credit for it, but Claude works slightly better, I think, in my opinion. So if you're using Copilot, if you have the paid plan, you could use the 3.7 or whatever the latest is. That does a better job in terms of code generation. And if you have any questions, let me know. So I put together a few resources. You can look up how to do the Copilot instructions. There's a lot of people have a lot of information on it, so you can look it up and then have your own set of instructions for the Copilot if you're using it. I didn't get into our GitLab workflow, but there is a full webinar on that. You can look into it, and then if you don't have the JSL extension or the Hamcrest framework, you can go get it. It helps with the development a lot. Yeah, that's about it. Sorry, I don't have much more than that. Okay. Any questions?